Okay, let's do this. Hey guys, it's Kathleen. Welcome back to my channel. You're probably wondering why I'm so serious today. Well, it's because I'm going to be reading some spooky stories from Reddit's NoSleep. Now, I've listened to many a YouTuber read the Reddit NoSleep stories, and I personally love scary stories. So, if you like scary stories just as much as I do, keep on watching. So I have 3 that I'm going to be reading today. Disclaimer, I don't own any of these, I just found them on Reddit. I will link all of the links below so you can read them yourselves if you'd like to. But I figured it adds to the ambiance if you have someone read it to you. So the first one, don't let strangers take your picture. The conversation was normal, until one of the speakers suffered a sudden and violent death. It began when a young, fresh-faced youth with an old-fashioned camera draped around his neck approached a young woman sitting on a park bench. "Excuse me, miss," he began tentatively. She looked up from her phone and brushed a lock of blonde hair out of her green eyes. "Yes," she said, masking her mild annoyance with a smile. "I'm doing a photography project for my school," he said. "I was wondering if I could photograph you." "Oh," she said. The request seemed to puzzle yet flatter her. She thought for a moment and then said, "Sure." "Great," said the young man, smiling. "Over there by that tree would be best." The woman gladly obliged, and the two strode over to the tree together, where the woman posed, somewhat awkwardly, with a smile that was almost genuine. "Actually," the young man said, "would you mind moving over a couple feet to the left?" "Just here?" the woman asked, shuffling over a couple feet. "Just a bit more," he said. She moved over a few more inches and smiled. 2 things happened at once. The camera flashed, and the young woman's head exploded into a bloody pulp. Suddenly, the world's volumes turned down. My heart pounded in my ears. The woman's body went limp and sank to the grass, spilling blood from her neck in a torrential fountain. The bystanders screamed, and my hands fumbled for my phone to dial 911. My hands were shaking badly, and I almost dropped my phone into the grass. After I dialed, I held the ringing phone to my ear and looked up. The young man was nowhere to be seen. I wondered where he had gone, but the thought was driven from my head as a 911 operator picked up. "911, said the woman's voice. "What's your emergency?" But I couldn't answer. Something was severely wrong with me. There didn't seem to be enough air in my lungs, and my hands started to feel cold and numb. I was dizzy now. The world spun, and the ground rose up to meet my face, smashing my nose painfully. My vision began to swim in darkness, and then there was nothing. When the EMTs revived me, the woman's body had already been packed into the ambulance and taken away, though the blood stain remained, a dark stain of brown against the green of the grass. The EMT said I had a panic attack and passed out. The police took my statement and they sent me home, numb in shock. A few weeks later, I had found out that the woman had been hit by a stray bullet from someone shooting cans in their backyard a mile away. It was a 1 in a million shot, they said. A week later, I saw the young man again. He wore the exact same clothes, had the exact same haircut and cheerful grin, and the same old-fashioned camera was draped around his neck. I saw him by chance through the window of a restaurant, chatting up an elderly couple who sat in a corner booth. The silent, smiling conversation did not last long before the young man convinced them to get up and move to another booth. He lifted his camera to his face and nothing happened. The old woman smiled and cocked her head to the side as if she was asking him something. He smiled back and raised a finger before lifting the camera to his face again. There was a sound like roaring thunder, and the wall of the restaurant exploded into dust and debris. A truck had crashed through the wall and demolished the old couple's booth. The young man stood there as if nothing had happened. He raised the camera to his face, took one more picture, and then turned to leave. He pushed the door to the restaurant open and walked out. He stopped and scanned the street. His gaze halted on me. The screaming and the chaos faded into silence as his preternatural blue eyes bore into mine. turning my insides to ice. And then, in a moment, he was gone. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. I hoped after that I'd never see him again, but fate did not care much about my hopes. It never does. I was having dinner with my wife and 5-year-old daughter, Sarah, and the air was filled with laughter and the smell of my wife's baked pork chops and creamed mushrooms. Sarah was telling us a story about a strange man she met by the school who had offered to take her picture. She said he had a strange smile and a really old camera like she had never seen before. My heart sat up and began to beat against the inside of my chest. Trying to maintain the illusion of calm, I set my fork down gently on my plate, and I told her that if she ever saw the man again, she was to run, and that she absolutely, under no circumstances, was allowed to let him take her picture. "But he did take my picture, Dad," said Sarah. "He wouldn't let me see it. But he said he'd come show me when it was ready in a week." "What?" I gasped. My voice was hoarse and small. My wife was looking between my Sarah and I with a look of concerned confusion. Sarah seemed to sense that something was wrong, and her chin began to quiver. "Nothing is wrong, honey," I said. "Everything's going to be okay." The lie struggled out of my throat, and the guilt of it seized my heart and squeezed it tight. Sarah's eyes were watery, but she continued what she was saying. "He said something else too, Dad," she said uncertainly. "He said it was very important." "Yes?" "He said he wouldn't develop my picture if you'd let him take yours in the park tomorrow at noon." A wave of relief intermingled with sadness washed over me, and a tension I hadn't even noticed dissolved from my shoulders. I could feel the tears standing out of my eyes as I kissed my daughter's head, taking in a huge whiff of her scent, that scent of pure youth that makes the old feel young again. I kissed my wife hard on the lips, savoring the taste, half lipstick and half the pork chops he had just eaten. "I love you, Janie," I said, "and I love you too, Sarah." They looked at me uncomprehendingly, concerned, as if I had lost my mind. I've always loved my family more than my life itself, and tomorrow at noon, I guess I'll have to prove it. Perhaps I can get the better of the stranger. Perhaps not. Wish me luck. Okay, the next one is called, Has Anyone Else Ever Camped at Wolf Rock? If you have spent any amount of time in the outdoors, you have had some kind of weird experience. If you haven't, just wait. You will. I have heard things, seen things, and felt things I can't explain. But the one that sticks out the most was my experience at Wolf Rock. My first strange experience there happened opening morning of turkey season 2 years ago. My brother-in-law and I were stopped on the dirt road above the ridge overlooking Wolf Rock. It was about 30 minutes before daylight when we noticed lights coming from the ridge. They flickered like lanterns and were moving along the ridge toward us, then disappeared and reappeared down towards Wolf Rock. It was like they were on a loop, because when they reached about where Wolf Rock was, they would disappear and start all over again. We left, but curiosity was building inside, and I knew I would be back. I did my research, and come to find out Wolf Rock is an oddity for my area. It was the only cave system in this part of Louisiana. It was used by Native Americans until the early settlers came in, and then it was used by outlaws as a hideout during the late 1800s. I talked to more people about the area and was told not to go there after dark. I was told everything from it's haunted to it's cursed. I wish I would have heeded their warnings. I had made up my mind. I would wait for hunting season to end and camp out there. The season finally ended, and I had all my gear loaded up and ready to go, and as I turned on that old dirt road, I had thought to myself about how easy it would be to turn around. But I shook that off. I made camp at the mouth of the cave and admired the beauty of the creek bottom that was before me. As the sun set, I had all but forgotten the stories I had heard. overcome by the wonder and the beauty of this place. As I sat by the fire, I could swear, out of the corner of my eyes, people sitting beside me. But when I would turn, there was nothing. I chalked it up to be the reflection of the fire against the cave. I decided to turn in for the night. It was so peaceful listening to the crickets sing their night song. I couldn't imagine why anyone would think this place was... The crickets just stopped. And in between my tent and the dying fire, a figure was standing there. And I yelled from my tent, "Hey, can I help you?" No reply. I yelled again, and still, no reply. I turned to grab my Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum out of my bag, but when I swung back around, it was gone. Try as I might, I could not go back to sleep. I got out of the tent and stoked the fire. I started to hear sounds, but I couldn't figure out what they were, but as it drew closer, I could tell it was voices. I looked to see where the voices were coming from. I could see lanterns headed towards me. My heart was beating out of my chest as they drew closer and closer. Then, just like that, they were gone. I went back to the fire thinking about leaving and coming back in the morning for my stuff. I decided to go get my gun and my bag and head back to the truck. As I was bent over in my tent grabbing my stuff, a shadow cast upon me. I turned, and there was a man wearing buckskins, dark-skinned, and a flint knife in his hand. He hollered and ran towards me. I emptied my revolver into him, but he just kept coming. I was frozen with fear as he plunged the knife into my chest. I screamed in pain, and he was gone. I reached to my chest, but there was nothing. The pain was gone. I ran all the way back to the truck and headed home. I have never been back to Wolf Rock, and I don't know how to explain what happened, or if any of what I seen was connected. All I know is there is some strange shit that goes on in that place, and if anyone has any idea about what I've seen, please let me know. Alright, the last one I'm going to read. I'm a rural police officer, and I have things I need to tell you. Now, formalities. I'm a sergeant in Saskatchewan RCMP, and have been for nigh on 6 years. I've seen some weird things, but who hasn't? The difference? Come when you see these things, then disappear for days at a time. I have been on here a while and seen other police SAR stories, so any similarities is purely coincidence, or the same thing happened across the map. Saskatchewan is a province in Canada, for those who don't know. It's mostly farmland, well, what isn't forest and river. Part of the area me and my partner Jay cover is a large valley that runs for almost 50 miles. I'm a farm kid, so I use miles instead of kilometers, but the rest is pounds and feet. To the South Saskatchewan River. The nearest large town or city that I feel comfortable naming is Saskatoon. Weird stuff has happened there as long as white people have been recording it. Maybe even longer. Anyway, on to the story, eh? It was the standard July night at about 10 p.m., so it was still light out. Someone called in about a vehicle in the ditch and empty. 10-2, this is dispatch. Go ahead, dispatch. We got a report of a car crash on redacted road. Car said to be empty. Alright, we'll head that way. 10-2, out. We were about 2 miles away, so it was about a 5-minute drive. Speed limit on gravel roads is 80 kilometers per hour. 50 miles per hour for the rest of you. As we crested the hill to go down into the valley, we saw a string of lights along the railway. They stayed there for about 30 seconds, then vanished. Think it's the Banshee? You buying into that bullshit, Jay? Hey, that bullshit is my heritage. Oh, right, I forgot, Mr. 1% native blood. As we got to the car, I noticed there were no tracks leading from the road to the car. This was mid-March, so it was muddy as hell. Dispatch, this is 10-2. Go ahead, 10-2. We just got to the car. No driver in the car, but it's still running. We're gonna go check it out. 10-4. We circled the car. It was in perfect condition. Not even a speck of mud. Aside from the driver door being slightly ajar, it was like this thing was sitting in a parking lot. Guess we better look around for the driver. We walked about 20 feet into the tree line. Nothing. Not even a broken branch. It was at this point I noticed a sound, like something walking just behind us. Now, I have been on NoSleep for a few months, so my mind was starting to go crazy. Wendigo? Rake? Skinwalker? I mentioned to Jay to make wide circles around back to the car. We split and walked about 10 feet forward at a 45-degree angle from where we split. Then we turned and headed for the carway from each other for about 15 feet before starting to converge back towards the car. It was at this 15 foot that I heard something run. Then Jay screamed for half a second before silence. I knew it was Cole, but at this point I sprinted to the car. Dispatch, this is 10-2. Go ahead, 10-2. We need backup medical out here. We have an officer down. I repeat, officer down. 10-4, backup is on its way. I grabbed the biggest thing I had, a 12 gauge, ripped the door open, and used it as a support to aim into the tree line. That's when Jay walked out of the tree line. But it wasn't him. Jay had been shot 4 years ago. It changed the way he carried himself. Not enough to notice, but enough so that if you knew he walked different, you would know if he walked normal. Stop right there! What do you mean? It's me. I can see through the bullshit. Stop right there. Who or whatever this thing was stopped and looked at me like a dog does, with its head cocked to the side. Then it changed. The only thing I can compare it to is the wraiths from the Witcher game series. If you don't know what I mean, go look it up. I immediately put the shotgun back in the car. I knew it wouldn't help. I slumped down beside the driver door. I figured this is the end. Killed by a fucking ghost. A few seconds later, a woman appeared in front of me. Just an ordinary woman. Nothing special. What's wrong? She asked. What's wrong? I'm about to die. Die? Oh, I've never heard a soul. Where's Jay then? He's all right. He just passed out from the shock of seeing me. Oh. Alrighty then. So that was that. I sat there for a few hours talking to something I had never heard before. A render. Far as I have found, this thing doesn't exist in any folklore anywhere. I found out that this entire valley is filled with strange, non-malevolent things. Things that normally would skin you alive. Wendigos, rakes, skinwalkers, leshens, etc. Anyway, I think I've kept you here long enough. Just tell me when and I'll start time again. Be warned though, when I start it, you'll be knocked out. Okay, thanks for not eating me or something. And just like that, blackness. Me and Jay were found unconscious around the car, no crashed car in sight. I never told anyone about the render, whose name was Becky, oddly enough. No one knew how he ended up knocked out, but the strangeness was just starting. I'm gonna end this video here. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to see more content from me. I post every Monday and Thursday. And leave a comment telling me if you'd like to hear more scary stories from Reddit's NoSleep in this month of Halloween. Maybe even leave a comment telling me if you've experienced something strange and supernatural. I'd love to hear those stories because I love ghost stories so much, especially when they've actually happened to someone. Thanks you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.